Iceberg content has never seen its death and always continues to thrive and survive. They cover many different titles throughout the internet and appeal to many audiences and communities, some more niche than others and some more well known, explored and discussed than the others. When Iceberg content first gained attraction, the videos that came from it were made by anyone who had interest within a specific topic that an Iceberg video was made about. One that caught me was the Stanley Parable Iceberg, and so my most popular video on my channel was uploaded, the Stanley Parable Iceberg. It's an iceberg chart all centered around my favorite game, and it felt like a calling, something that no matter how it was publicly received, I would have to make. And I did exactly that. Once I uploaded that video, I was proud. It was one thing I did that I made that I was genuinely proud of doing and was happy to share. For months, it gained no attraction, but I didn't care. I was happy it existed, until it hit 1k views. The creator of the Iceberg commented, I got feedback, then hit 4k views, and is now just over that margin. For me, this is big. I mean, compared to maybe other videos or creators, it barely means anything, but to me it meant something. I thought I would need to follow it up and quickly just make and pump other similar ideas, script work videos. After that video was published, I got started almost instantly on another script, a BoJack Horseman script, which ended up being a miss. I didn't care. I enjoyed writing it, making it, and editing it. I then started working on another script, one on the beginner's guide, one of my favorite videos that I've made. I recommend giving it a watch, and if you haven't, it's one I'm definitely proud of. Sure, I didn't do too well, but again, I didn't care. The process was the fun part for me. The next 3 videos after that would all be script work centered. I would take big breaks because I got bored of making videos. I stopped having fun with the process. The next video after the beginner's guide was the other BoJack Horseman video. It felt forced, but I felt a need to do it, like I had to release something, and so that happened. The last video following was fun, maybe not my favorite, but it was actually fun to write, to edit, and to record, but still not what I was necessarily wanting to make. I loved the game, I loved writing the script, but I wanted to do something else. I tried making a shorter script video, one on indie games. I liked it, it was small, quick, and easy, but not exactly what I wanted. Now I'm writing this. A script similar to one I've written previously, the type of script I've been wanting to write, and something I'm begging myself to get done. The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe released on Steam on April 27th, 2022. Within seconds, it was in my library and downloading. Seeing the blue bar on Steam go up filled me with excitement and joy. I was more than ready for the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, and it was more than anything I could have thought it would be. Funnier, more interesting, more philosophical, and better in every single way possible. I was waiting for this movement to come over me since the game released, a new iceberg for the new game, or at least, new additions. I have found a new Stanley Parable Iceberg updated with the new game, new entries, more levels. I'll be repeating some ideas in the last video, so no need to watch my other video discussing the Stanley Parable Iceberg. Freedom ending. The Stanley Parable's true ending, or deemed true ending to those who play it, would be the freedom ending, where you follow every word of the narrator and see it through to the end with him, going through everything the way he planned and predicted it, no second thought and no ill intention. Countdown, or bomb ending. This ending is following the narrator's directions until the end. Instead of choosing the freedom ending by shutting down the system, you turn it on, and instead of it working again, it's a self-destruct button where the narrator starts to mock, insult, and essentially shit on the player, until ultimately, you and the office blow up, leading to a restart. Broom Closet. The Broom Closet is an Easter egg, and not technically an ending. Once finding a door titled the Broom Closet and interacting with it, making it one of the few, if not the only interactable and openable doors, holds dialogue that is a relief from the prominent story that the narrator holds. It has goofy and quirky dialogue and has been improved in the new game. Once you cry the bucket, it adds even more depth to this Easter egg, allowing stickers on your bucket and heated arguments. 2 doors. The 2 doors are the prominent idea and staple point of what the Stanley Parable is and what it revolves around. The illusion of choice and the 2 straightforward choices, however none of that is true. The whole idea of the Stanley Parable is making you believe that you have free choice. Everything is thought of, and the reoccurring idea of the 2 doors is a reminder that you can't leave and there is no real choice. Reluctant or coward ending. This ending is simple, closing the door before walking out of the office and having the narrator commentate on how scared Stanley is and how much he lives in his own world in his head. One of the many endings within the game. The game's ending. The game's ending is an ending where the narrator puts you through other games. It's different in both editions of the game. In the first original Stanley Parable, the narrator would put you through Portal as well as Minecraft, and ending with the Half-Life mod for the Stanley Parable. In the Ultra Deluxe, he puts you in Firewatch and Rocket League, and again ending with the Half-Life mod of the original Stanley Parable. The Stanley Parable Reassurance Bucket. The bucket was something that was brought and introduced in the Ultra Deluxe, in the narrator's version of the game. To the narrator, the reassurance bucket is the most important and crucial item in the game, giving it a new addition and spice while also making it simultaneously new. It's the center of the new game and everything it revolves around. The narrator. The narrator is the most important character. the one with the voice, the one with direction, and the creator of the entire story. I mean, without him, the Stanley Parable is nothing. He is truly an amazing character, and in the Ultra Deluxe, we finally get to see and understand a different side of him, one that is less cynical, almost sweet, somber, reminiscent. He has a whole different side to him. He is almost a different character, but not quite. New content. In the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, after completing a handful of endings upon boot up, a door becomes accessible and slightly open, titled New Content. The narrator points it out. You go on a fun little ride of the history of the game and take it into a disappointing elevator. The narrator gives his thoughts, mocking reviewers, until the new content continues further, showing the jump circle and a room with a whiteboard, seemingly being all there is to the new content. Insane ending. The insane ending appears in both games, and one of my favourite endings. Instead of proceeding up towards the boss's office, you head down the stairs, going into a continual loop without an exit. The narrator sends Stanley spiraling, thinking he is in a dream, that nothing is real, and that he is truly insane. It continues until the screen goes black and we are introduced to a woman named Mariella. This ending plays out differently when you have the bucket. The ending plays out similarly until Stanley talks to the bucket, with no response of course. He realizes that the bucket isn't actually his, and that leads to even more insanity, and that if he doesn't have his own bucket, he goes further down the hole of insanity. Then Mariella is introduced the same, but with a bucket, her bucket. This ending is titled differently to some, either the Insanity ending, Dream ending, or Mariella ending. The Stanley Parable 2. The Stanley Parable 2 is the narrator's interpretation of what the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe should have been. Going through the new content door later on, except this time with a bigger sign, the narrator shows Stanley his version, and how he will truly fix the game and make it so much better than Crows and Davey Reedon did without directly mentioning them by name. We are introduced to so many wonders the narrator invented, or at least many he only had the idea of, many of which that will be discussed further in the video. After this situation, the main menu changes. From the bland office with yellow boxes and white text, it changes to a cinematic, going through doors and rooms with red undertones and boxes, and a somber tone playing. This only changes once introduced to the epilogue, something that we will also discuss later on. Mostly Infinite Hole. The Mostly Infinite Hole is a concept brought to us by the narrator during the Stanley Parable 2 Expo. A lot of thought was put into the idea of the hole, Stanley falling down it multiple times, only to both Stanley and the narrator surprised that it gets smaller and shorter every single time, until there is barely any room to fall, and without the ability to jump and the teleport button that the narrator gave you originally now not working, Stanley is stuck and starts hallucinating. The hole slowly falling into the earth, bringing Stanley with it, offering a weird angle of Stanley and options to play around with, such as perceptions, camera angles, music background, and a lot of other wacky ideas. Cold feet and powerful endings. The cold feet and the powerful endings are very similar in the same location, however one only takes an extra step to achieve. The cold feet ending occurs when you go through the right door, step on the platform, but quickly step off it. The narrator almost mocks Stanley, saying he got cold feet and that he can either jump off or get comfortable. If you get close and then back away again, he mocks you more, childishly chanting for you to do nothing more than to jump, that it isn't that far. But when you do and hit the floor, he simply says that Stanley was mistaken. If you have the bucket, the narrator convinces Stanley to jump, and that the bucket would save him, having cushioning to break the fall. Once you hit the floor, the same speech plays and the game resets. The powerful ending is the same, however you just jump off the platform to the floor without hovering or pussyfooting. The narrator's dialogue is different, almost impressed, saying how Stanley must have had the power and courage to jump, thinking if he does, he can end the torment and hell that the narrator offers, sarcastically congratulating him before resetting. If the bucket is held, however, it's a completely different idea. The narrator states how Stanley did it because he was too scared of the idea that at one point on his journey he would have to be separated from the bucket, and so took the bucket with him whilst falling to his death. The art and/or baby game ending. The art ending is an ending achieved through the same route of the game's ending. Instead of ruining the baby game that the narrator set up for you by killing the baby, you play his game for 2+ hours, where he also introduces a second button, making it more tedious to complete. Once you complete it, seemingly the essence of divine art talks to you, revealing its true self and granting Stanley true freedom, something he longed for the entire time of his life within the office. This is unachievable with the bucket, with a completely different ending, one more comical and of a completely different nature. Out of Bounds ending. The Out of Bounds or Out of Map ending is simple and easily achievable. Before even ending up at the two doors, Stanley can climb his way onto a table and chairs, making it able for him to escape the office, or at least jump out of the map into a white void box. The ending has alternate endings within itself. The narrator exclaims how Stanley had found his way out of the office and broke the game. However, instead, it is just an Easter egg. A splash of text saying, "Are you sick of this gag yet?" will splash up on the white wall, with the options of yes or no. Selecting no, the narrator continues and questions what Stanley would have done should he have picked the other option, almost inviting him to restart and try the other option by leaving the situation in silence. If picking yes, the narrator gets annoyed, saying all Stanley had to do was restart the game if he was so sick of the gag. He'll think Stanley is in a mental crisis, meaning he can't restart the game, laughing at him. The narrator just mocks Stanley, playing a limerick on his guitar, until after it just ends. If holding the bucket shows joyous to Stanley, saying how they finally escaped the office and the narrator, and how he can present his truthful, real form to him. An intense segment for Stanley. Stanley interrupts, yelling he is just a bucket, but he isn't. He was turned into a bucket by Gamarata. I'll let the clip explain itself.
Stanley clung the bucket to his cheek. Could his co-workers really all be gone? Yes, whispered the bucket into Stanley's ear. We've done it. We've escaped from that dull office and that pesky narrator. At last, out here in the white void, we are alone. Now, and for the first time, I can reveal to you my true self. The bucket began to tell Stanley of its life and its history, of the countless wars it witnessed, desecrating the land and lives of untold numbers of innocent humans, and the bucket's own complicity therein, of sadness and regret, and the many years it spent dwelling on the actions it might have taken to curb the madness and the decay, if only it had been stronger, of hope and redemption, and its crusade to uplift the stock of life for the common man, to manifest justice where none existed, and the bittersweet reality of time, to see one's dreams and wishes met halfway, meted out in parcels like charity, and abandoned as soon as the warm glow of inspiration begins to dim. The opportunities to do so much more. There was so much it could have done, perhaps, the bucket wondered to itself. Perhaps if it had seen its own darkness with a clearer perception. This was way too much for Stanley.
What are you talking about?
He screamed.
You're a bucket!
To this, the bucket furrowed its brow.
No,
said the bucket.
not since the evil wizard Gambhorata first ensnared me in his machinations as payback for the sacred amulet I stole from his treasured vaults. I was young back then and could not conceive the ramifications of... No!
Stanley screamed even louder this time.
This is stupid! You are a bucket! This is so stupid! Why are we even doing this?
As Stanley screamed and screamed and screamed, the bucket revealed its true form, transforming into a mighty beast of untold power, its fangs glistening like... My God, Stanley, you did it! You saved us from the bucket. Thank God you already had all 12 emblems of sages and knew the incantations to summon their true power. Otherwise, we would have easily been overwhelmed by the bucket's power. I'm speechless. You've demonstrated such bravery here today. Come, let's restart the game, and we'll agree to never again go trifling with this bucket, nor the dark magic cast away inside of it.
Epilogue. The epilogue was introduced in the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe, only seen after getting the figurines ending as well as going through all the boot-up messages. The epilogue is an amazing part of the game, walking through places from the new game that is overrun by sand, deserted forever, with Cookie Nine's blog appearing, a nod to the narrator's rants in the Steam reviews. You go through what happened when the game was left untouched and forgotten about. I'll let you witness the epilogue for yourself. Just before it ends, a computer is seen, able to be interacted with. The text from all the boot up screens is there, a contrast and polar opposite personality to what the narrator is and what he means. It's easy to see their differences. The text mentions the narrator, saying he is wrong to protect the integrity, and that they should run the game into the ground and make money, because not everything needs to be solidified and to be the best. Also the fact that the narrator speaks, and the text is just text. Neither of them collide, even with their choice of communication. After the epilogue, from now on, booting up the game, the title menu changes from the Stanley Parable 2, instead to the Stanley Parable blank blank, with a number depending on how many times you've opened up the game and 2 random words of your choice. Heaven Ending. The Heaven Ending is achievable in both games once interacting with 5 different computers within 5 different playthroughs of the game. Once interacting with all 5, it leads you to a white room, a heaven-like space with buttons circling you, 432 to be exact, a lot of different colours. The narrator doesn't react or respond, being one of the few that he has no words for, or maybe didn't even know existed. Choir-like music plays in the background repeating the words, "push the buttons." The only way to leave is to restart yourself. You can access this ending with a bucket, however, this offers no change at all. Whiteboard Ending. The whiteboard ending is more of a gag and a little goof and gaff more than anything. It only occurs on a random office layout that has a small chance of happening in room 426. It shows a whiteboard saying, "The whiteboard ending," with a piece of text in the bottom titled Dog Mode. In the Ultra Deluxe, if interacted with, anytime you press the interact key, a dog's bark plays, and can be turned off by interacting with the button again. In the original, it would just show text saying console, bark. Serious Ending. This ending only exists in the first game. When writing SV_cheats1 in the console, it loads you into a cell-like room with a table in the middle. The narrator remarks the seriousness of the situation, explaining the serious room and the serious table and the serious situation at hand. If tried again, you are taken back, and the narrator says how Stanley hasn't properly learned, and maybe the table isn't serious enough. If trying on a third time, the narrator just says how he needs to look through some notes, and some more tables. A fourth time takes you back, but no dialogue. No way out but restarting. The only door in the room is useless to try and open because it just leads directly to a wall. Female narrator / museum ending. The museum ending is an intricate one. Following a written sign reading "Escape," you are taken down a long and foggy corridor until you fall through the floor and into a pod that will ultimately crush you. the narrator making his final remarks and goodbyes to Stanley until he is interrupted. The game freezes, and a female narrator starts narrating the narrator who is narrating Stanley, and the floor opens under you. You enter a museum showing the game's development and jokes spread around. It shows layouts of offices, door and wall designs, alternate endings, a war zone, and many other interesting sights. After exploring, you leave and are taken back to the pod, which will crush you. The female narrator begs the player themselves to restart the game, to save Stanley and not to watch him die a gruesome death, and not to let all the hard work go to waste. If you restart, nothing happens, you just restart the game. If you don't, Stanley gets crushed and the game restarts anyway. If you have the bucket, the interaction is quite different. The narrator still says his goodbyes to Stanley, but comments on how foolish he was to bring the bucket with him. The female narrator interrupts again, but now the museum isn't game design themed at all, but it's a museum dedicated to the bucket. To leave, you interact with a hanging bucket from the ceiling. The female narrator remarks on how significant and magnificent the bucket is and claiming that Stanley is selfish for taking it. Then you are taken back to the pod. This time, the female narrator begs you to stay and not restart the game, a complete 180 from the other alternate ending. That Stanley deserves death for being so selfish and to save the bucket. No matter what, the game will restart. Employee 245. Employee 245, at least I think, is tied to the Easter egg of seeing someone in the window of Office 425, where another Stanley or employee walks through the warehouse. However, that is in a different office. Other people on Steam pages have discussed it being a stalker, an alternate Stanley, or Stanley hallucinating. Employee 432. Employee 432 is hinted at often and will be discussed a lot during this video, with his desk number appearing almost everywhere, even appearing and confirmed to be the settings person, the text that speaks to us on boot up, and the epilogue. He's interesting. It seems as if he was fired and someone experiencing exactly what Stanley is experiencing in the Stanley Parable. The Easter eggs hinting to him include the blocked out name in the mind control facility room showing his desk. Going to the phone room, you can see a box full of pencil sharpeners titled 432. Unplugging the phone and going back, it disappears. He has no computer on his desk, only a lamp and a pencil sharpener. In the confusion ending, a paper can be seen with a daily performance review of Employee 432. In the same ending, by following the line all the time, there will be a corridor called Employee 432 Peer Reviews in the company archives. And so many more written pieces of game archives alluding to him. If you want to look through them all, simply look up Employee 432, and that'll do the trick. Vent endings. The vent ending is achievable if you have achieved the sequel ending. After going through the right door towards a cargo lift, you can fall down towards the left on a plank, leading you to a vent showing a sub-room of the warehouse, littered with cassettes and a cassette player. There are two different ways this ending plays, with or without the bucket. If you don't have the bucket, the cassette player, once interacted with, will have the narrator's voice blaring through it, but interrupted by a tape failure. Then the narrator's voice echoes out, not through the cassette player, criticizing Stanley for falling for such a cliche twist. If you picked up the bucket, it's completely different. Instead, the cassette player will play a tape titled Evidence 252. It's a man monologuing, someone who had discovered the bucket and how reassuring it truly was, planning on monetizing it for financial gain, allowing people to hold on to it for small amounts of time, until he is cut off. He goes silent and whispers, "Gambarata," followed by more silence, assumingly killed. Gambarata. Gambarata is a character mentioned only by name and introduced in the Ultra Deluxe. He is only mentioned during the vent ending when holding the bucket, and the out of the map ending also when holding the bucket. We understand that it is a real person, or at least a thing, from how it seemingly killed the cassette man in the vent ending, and has the ability to turn others into buckets. People speculate the vent ending man to be the bucket, but we won't know for sure. It is alluded to and referred every so often, with it being chanted in the cave drawing exhibition in the bucket version of the museum ending, it being an evil wizard according to the bucket, someone who kills and turns others into buckets. It's the name of the 26th full track of the Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe soundtrack, and is even titled after them, Gambarata, the treasurer of the profane vault. And some make links to his name, and the meaning, in Hindi being seriousness, some believing the new game's link to the serious ending. Real reviews. I'm not sure if this links to the idea of actual, genuine reviews to the game, or the reviews mentioned within the game. The reviews in the game were said to be fake, or at least, if they are real, have different names attached to them, except for the Cookie 9 reviews, and blog being made by the team. A joke and a gag. Out of bounds areas. The game has places that are out of bounds. The out of map ending is alluding to that. In the original game, there was a way to hit the bottom of the mind control facility. A bug being out of bounds, however, in the Ultra Deluxe was fixed. Well, more added upon, with narrator dialogue being added to it. In the new game, there is a new out of bounds area, however, it is known by the developers, seemingly intentional. It is able to fall from the cargo lift, but survive when at the warehouse floor. You can walk around, and once you go where the truck is parked, the open garage door, a white void is shown, and somber music plays. Nothing but this happens until you restart. There are apparently others, like out-of-bounds locations, however, those of which I'm unaware of. Night shark. The night shark is a species of requiem shark, found in the temperate and tropical waters of the Atlantic Ocean. An inhabitant of the outer continental shelf and upper continental slope, the shark most commonly occurs at depths of 50 to 600 meters, and conducts a ideal vertical migration, spending the day in the deeper water and moving into the shallow waters at night. Off northeastern Brazil, large numbers congregate around seamounts of varying depths. A slender streamlined species, the night shark typically reaches a length of 2 meters. It can be identified by its long pointed snout and large green eyes, and is dark greyish blue or brown above the water below. Night sharks are quick, nocturnally active, schooling predators that feed mainly on small bony fish and squid. Reproduction is viparous, as with the other members of its family, females mate during the summer and give birth to litters of usually 12 to 18 pups after a gestation period of a year. This deep water species is not known to pose a danger to humans, is caught incidentally by commercial tuna and swordfish longline fisheries in the western Atlantic, and also by a targeted longline fishery operating off northeastern Brazil. The night shark is highly valued for its fins and additionally a source of meat, liver oil, and fish meal. However, most night sharks caught off northeastern Brazil have been found to contain unsafe concentrates of mercury. That may have seemed like useless information, and it is, however it ties into the game. In the original Half-Life mod of the game, there would be a point where the narrator would rant on about night sharks, reading the wiki page about them to Stanley, and is also the code to the boss's office in the not Stanley or real person ending. The narrator. This entry is mainly dedicated to the lore of the narrator, something that we don't know all that much about. The narrator is a transcendental entity that exists independently from the game world and manifests himself as a voice in Stanley's head. It is unknown what the narrator truly is, but his powers, alignment, and motives vary per ending. Jokingly, Davey Reader on a Twitch stream said that not only is the narrator divorced, but is the embodiment of what divorce is. But we aren't supposed to understand much of the narrator's lore. That goes against everything of what he is. We know that the narrator understands his role of voicing over a game. He is aware of what the Stanley Parable is. After all, with the new content and supposedly writing it all, we also understand that after the game resets, so does he, with no memory of what happened before. At least in the first game. In the second game, he only seems to remember some things, like the figurines and the bucket, his original content. So maybe he didn't write everything from the Stanley Parable. We won't truly ever know. Stanley is in Don't Push the Button. Look, I'll be honest, I don't understand this one. There are many games titled Don't Push the Button, or at least many with similar names, and finding the exact game is hard to do. However, the one that seems like it would fit the best is the game Don't Push the Red Button. However, I couldn't find anything attached to it. This one has stumped me, and trying to research it shows nothing. If you know or have any idea, please leave it in the comments. I really want to know what this means. Employee 432 Lore. The Employee 432 lore was something that I mentioned earlier when talking about Employee 432, so I'll repeat. Employee 432 is a fired employee that seemingly experienced what Stanley is experiencing and is mentioned often. The employee with no text at the mind control facility shows the Employee 432 desk. On your way to the phone room, you will see a box full of pencil sharpeners that has the number 432 on it. When you unplug the phone and come back, the box is gone. Employee 432 doesn't have a computer on his desk, only a pencil sharpener and a desk lamp. In the confusion ending, a paper can be seen with the daily performance review of Employee 432. In the same ending, by following the line all the time, there will be a corridor called Employee 432 Peer Reviews in the company archives. In the escape pod ending, all the windows are facing Employee 432's desk. There are more papers showing the employee's supervision protocols in the mind control facility. There is a paper in the mind control facility that says 432 ask 431 for a pencil, 431 as per procedure did not respond. 432 has a lot of pencil sharpeners, but there are only 3 pencils in the entire game. There is drawings of 432's desk and a pencil sharpener on it somewhere in the office. At the monitor rooms, some screens have written on it, Employee fired. One of them points out Desk 432, thereby putting an end to Employee 432's fate regarding their participation in the building. However, the monitors actually all stem from a limited number of images, one of which shows 432's desk, so this is likely coincidental as several monitors show the same image. 432 is mentioned in the IndieBox Stanley Parable manual as one of the characters, but no information about them is given. On the whiteboard in the meeting room, you can see a planned meeting with the title, What to Do About 432, and next to it stands, Don't Tell 432 About the Meeting. In the mind control facility, multiple monitors show views of 432's desk. Oddly, some, but not all of them, show a box of pencil sharpeners that is normally not there. A paper added in the Ultra Deluxe edition titled Employee 432 Observation Report, which can be found in multiple places such as outside the 432 peer reviews room and the vent ending, reads, Employee 432 Observation Report. Day 3208, asked for a pencil, pencil not provided. Day 3209, asked for a pencil, pencil not provided. Day 3210, began to speak rapidly, somewhat incoherently. I must keep the wheel turning, I must go forever. Repeated variants of these phrases for several hours. Day 3211, continue speaking as before. Day 3212, employee is missing, cannot be located, such efforts underway. Day 3213, still unable to locate employee. Secret credits music. This is music that only a handful of people have actually seen or heard. It appeared in the first game, and I was unaware of its existence until writing this section. To get it to play, on the main menu type the words secret letter by letter, then click on the credits option, should they not play automatically. Then this song should play. Mind Control Facility Architectural Loop Paper. This part seems to be tied to the parts within the Mind Control Facility with papers titled Employee Observation Protocol. It's an interesting part of the game, or at least an interesting addition to the game. Something so easily overlooked, at least something I definitely didn't spend enough time looking at when simply playing the game. However, for researching this video, I've understood more of the underlying secrets within this game, the real and true genius of the Stanley Parable. In the Mind Control Facility, you can see a paper called Employee Observation Protocol showing the following text. 1A. If an employee begins exhibiting unscheduled emotions, immediately contact supervisor. 1B. Please note that employee 432 is a test case. Procedure 1A not need apply. 2A. If an employee attempts to leave the office via any non-scheduled means, e.g. window, vehicle, unsafe door, set employee status to default and then back to their previous mode. If attempts to leave persist, contact supervisor. 2B. If, despite adherence to Protocol 2A, an employee somehow manages to leave the office during work hours, you must initiate lockdown procedure for that section immediately and without delay. This will create a temporary loop in system architecture that must be then closed by your immediate supervisor. Watching Man. The Watching Man is interesting. Added in the Ultra Deluxe, the Watching Man appears a couple times, a figure that sits just within sight or appears in very specific circumstances, offering nothing but intrigue to the player. In the game files, he is titled A Man, which the community found being short for Airport Man. In-game, he only appears within 2 specific areas, however was shown in the trailer as well. It seems he at least likes buckets, as he only appears within the 2 circumstances if holding a bucket. He appears within the Is This a Bucket ending and the elevator which leads to the Mind Control Facility. Some believe it is Employee 432, however it seems as if Employee 432 ended up becoming the settings person. Some believe him to be the living representation of Gabrata, because both are mentioned or seen twice, and a handful even like to think it's the physical body of the narrator. He also appears within the trailer for the game, almost obviously within sight. He has to be important, however so far no luck. He is simply the third person that we physically know of. Stanley? the Secret Stanley lookalike Easter egg going past some windows, and now a man/washing man/airport man. Secrets and textures. On the Iceberg chart, this relates to how designer William Pugg left secrets within some of the textures to tease Davey Wreden. But there are always secrets within game textures, sometimes notes left attached to them and that can be found after release, or sometimes direct messages to the players who are looking through the textures and codes to find out of place things. To know secrets within the textures for the Stanley Parable, simply looking at the fandom wiki under the secrets and Easter eggs will outline a handful that fall directly under the textures within the game. And with that, we come to the end of the iceberg. Well, at this current date. It's not known for sure if it will be updated, but if it does, knowing me, I'll doubt I'll update it. If you've watched this far, thank you. I hope you enjoyed the video, at least up to this point. It was a blast to write and edit and overall just make. So thanks for taking time out of your life to, I guess, watch my work. If you aren't subscribed, please do so, and if you haven't liked already, I'd greatly appreciate it. But with that, see you in my next video, whenever that will be.